Hey everyone, so today we're going to talk about something that millions of us do, but almost nobody talks about, creating these super detailed imaginary scenarios in our heads. We're going to dig into the psychology behind why we do this, and trust me, what you find out might actually surprise you. It's definitely not as pointless as it seems. So, let me just ask you this. Do you ever find yourself, mentally rehearsing a tough conversation before it even happens? Or maybe you play out an entire argument in your head that you never actually had with someone. You know, you imagine these future events down to the exact dialogue, the emotional reactions, everything. If that sounds familiar, you are definitely not alone. It's actually a really common psychological pattern, and it has a fascinating explanation. Yeah, most of us probably just write this off as overthinking, right? Or maybe we think it's kind of pointless or even a little childish. But psychology gives us a totally different way to look at it. It sees this habit as a form of forecasting, as a protective instinct, and even as a deep search for meaning. So let's start with that first one, how our minds are basically trying to predict the future.
Okay, so first up, the predictive mind. Now, you might think this is just random daydreaming, but it's really not. For a lot of people, it's a huge sign that their mind is just constantly thinking, several steps ahead of everyone else. It's not so much about escaping reality, it's really about preparing for it.
And I think this quote just nails it. Some minds don't wait for life to happen, they rehearse it. I mean, that really gets to the heart of it, doesn't it? It shows how proactive this whole thing is. We're talking about a mind that's actively jumping in and engaging with all the possibilities of the future, not one that's just sitting back and waiting for things to happen.
And yeah, there's actually a scientific term for this. It's called predictive processing. Basically, it's just the brain's natural habit of running these internal simulations. A great way to think about it is like a mental flight simulator. It's testing out conversations, potential fights, big wins, and even epic fails, all before any of it actually happens in the real world.
And this whole process, it usually kind of follows three main steps. It all kicks off with that simple little question, what if? From there, your mind just goes to town, running these super detailed simulations. And then, the final step, whether you realize you're doing it or not, is that your brain starts preparing for all the possible outcomes, the good and the bad. It's really just our brain's clever way of trying to get a leg up on life. All right, so moving on. Let's get into the emotional heart of this habit. Because it's not just about trying to predict what's next. No, it's way deeper than that. It's really tied to our need for emotional safety, and a lot of the time, that goes all the way back to our earliest experiences. So here's a really important way to think about this. It's not a flaw, it's a shield. For many, it's this quiet little coping mechanism that they developed, probably without even realizing it, just to help them get through the world. So why does the brain even build this shield in the first place? Well, a lot of the time, it's something learned in, let's say, unpredictable environments growing up. By imagining what could happen ahead of time, the brain is trying to soften the blow of any future emotional shocks. It's also creating this really crucial sense of control. And that's an important point, right? It's not necessarily just anxiety. It's a form of preparation. And here's what's absolutely wild. These fake scenarios, they can trigger very real emotional reactions. I'm talking pride, sadness, anger, even relief. And this all ties back to a concept psychologists call high emotional stimulation. And this next quote just captures it so perfectly. It says that for people who do this, their inner world is vivid enough that imagined experiences can teach, warn, or comfort them. And that's all without anything actually happening in the real world. It's just incredible. It shows they don't just think deeply, they feel deeply. Okay, so for our final major point, let's look at the cognitive drive behind all of this. What's pushing the brain to do it? Because it's not just about predicting the future or protecting ourselves in the present, it's also about making sense of the past. People who do this a lot often prefer to process things internally rather than through, say, external trial and error. You've heard the phrase learn by doing, right? Well, for these folks, it's more like learn by imagining. And that's actually why they might seem a little quiet or maybe even slow to act sometimes. But trust me, when they finally do make a move, you can bet it has been thought through from every single angle. So, what's the engine driving all this? It's something called meaning-driven cognition. And really, it's just a powerful, deep-seated need to find closure and make things make sense. Our minds, they just hate unresolved situations or emotional loose ends. So what do?
They work overtime to tie them all up, even if it's only happening inside our own heads. And think about what these scenarios actually give us. They can offer a sense of closure for a conversation you never got to have. They can help you finally understand some confusing thing that happened. They can even deliver a feeling of justice for something that went wrong in the past. At the end of the day, they validate our feelings and help bring a sense of order and coherence to our reality. So let's recap. We've seen that creating these fake scenarios, it's a sign of a mind that is predictive, protective, and is constantly seeking meaning. But, and this is a big but, there's one final super important point we need to talk about. And it all comes down to one word: balance. The line between healthy and unhealthy here is actually pretty clear. A healthy rehearsal is when you use your imagination to prepare yourself for reality, but it crosses over into an unhealthy replacement when it starts preventing you from actually living your life. I think the healthiest minds, they just know when it's time to stop rehearsing and finally step onto the stage.
And that really leaves us with one last pretty powerful question to think about for ourselves. Do you imagine things to prepare for your life? Or has your mind just gotten so good at preparing that it can't stop? It's a really fascinating difference, isn't it? And definitely something worth thinking about. Thanks so much for joining me.